My parents praised my brother for having the third car before 25 while mocking me for saving every penny when they asked me to co-sign a loan. I suggested they sell one of my brother's cars. When I was 21, my parents threw my brother a party for buying his third car, not graduating college, not getting a job, just buying another car, a two-door monstrosity with underglow lights and leather seats that probably cost more than my entire emergency fund. He rubbed it in the driveway like he was trying to summon a Fast and Furious cameo. I remember standing there with a solo cup of flat soda watching everyone fawn over it like it was a newborn. My mom even wiped a smudge off the hood like it was a baby's cheek. "Isn't he amazing?" she beamed. 3 cars before 25. I was 21, I had no car, no house, no parade in the driveway. Just a sad bank account and a savings jar labeled "break only if the apocalypse arrives." So when I mentioned that I'd finally saved up enough to open a high-interest savings account, a small win but a big one for me, my dad snorted. "No offense, Mason," he said, waving his drink like a pointer stick, "but saving pennies won't impress anyone. You can't drive a savings account." My brother Chad, yes, his actual name unfortunately added, "Yeah, bro, you should loosen up. Money's meant to move, not sit there like it's on life support." Everyone laughed. I didn't because I wasn't saving to impress anyone. I was saving so I wouldn't end up begging someone to split fries with me on the 5th of every month. That night, I went home to my tiny studio apartment above a nail salon and looked around at my mismatched furniture and flickering lamp. It didn't smell like new leather, sure more like nail polish remover and cheap ramen, but it was mine, paid in full every month. No credit cards, no IOS. I laid down on my futon, stared at the ceiling tiles, and promised myself one thing. I'd rather be broke on my own terms than flashy on someone else's dime. See, what no one at that party knew was that Chad's fleet of cars all financed every single one. My parents co-signed 2 of them. And when I asked my mom once if they could help me with tuition, she said, "You've always been independent." We're proud of that, right? So proud. In fact, they offered me leftover takeout when I visited and expected me to clap when Chad posted car selfies on Instagram with captions like, "Hustle hard, nap harder, flex biceps, automobile dashing away." He lived at home, rent-free. Meanwhile, I worked 40 hours a week in warehouse logistics plus evenings and weekends helping out a retired mechanic who paid me in greasy envelopes of 20s and meatball subs. Not glamorous, not post-worthy, but steady, and every dollar went towards something. Tools, emergency cash, eventually a beater car I bought off Craigslist that stalled at every 3rd red light. But hey, it didn't come with monthly payments or parental strings attached. By the time I turned 24, I had 2 years' worth of living expenses saved, no debt, and a side hustle fixing busted Beamers out of my friend's driveway. Oil changes, brake pads, whatever paid. Chad still at home, still revving, still tagging his Snapchats. Hashtag see you in progress. The only thing he was managing was our parents' patience and their wallets. But to them, he was going places. And I was just practical. My mom actually called me that once like it was a bad word. "Oh, Mason, he's just so practical," she said at Thanksgiving in the same tone you'd use for someone who collects lint or alphabetizes soup cans. She said it right after handing Chad a check for future investments. Mine just said, "Bring rolls next year." I'd be lying if I said it didn't sting. Every year, every holiday, every casual Sunday barbecue, I was the backdrop. The side note, the dependable one who didn't need much. And the truth was, they were right. I didn't need much. I just wanted respect. But respect wasn't flashy. It didn't have underglow or sound like a lawnmower on Red Bull. It looked like saving, working, showing up, and never asking for applause. And for a long time, I thought that meant I'd always be invisible, just a shadow in the background of someone else's highlight reel. But what they didn't know was while they chased attention, I was building something real. Quietly, brick by brick. By 26, I'd saved enough to lease a dusty 2-bay garage on the edge of town. The sign outside said Mason's Reliable Repair, hand-painted by a buddy who owed me for helping him move 3 times. It wasn't flashy, no vending machine, no waiting room espresso, just me, a second-hand lift, a few rolling tool chests, and the echo of every car problem within a 10-mile radius. Meanwhile, Chad had just wrecked his 4th car. Apparently a squirrel jumped out of nowhere. The tree he hit disagreed. I didn't hear it from him. I found out through Mom's Facebook posts. Prayers for Chad. Folded hands. Scary crash today. He's okay, thank God. Cars are replaceable, sons are not. Cue the comment section exploding with "OMG, what happened?" And he's so strong. No mention of the fact that he wasn't wearing a seatbelt, was speeding through a cul-de-sac, and had just posted a selfie an hour earlier holding a 4 Loko. But hey, inspirational, right? while Chad was getting emergency financing for car number 5. I was spending nights under the hood of a '92 Civic trying to convince the transmission to act like it had a future. I'd picked up a reputation in town, the guy who didn't rip you off, who worked late, who'd show up in the rain if your battery died in a grocery store parking lot. No silver spoon, just socket wrenches and scraped knuckles. But to my parents, I was just Mason. Reliable, predictable, not much of a dreamer. They said that once, like it was a bad thing, like showing up, paying bills, and not crashing vehicles, was somehow a flaw. Chad, though, big ideas. Dad would say, clapping him on the back. He's got vision. Chad's thinking about launching a brand. Mom told me one day over the phone like he'd invented fire. Oh yeah, I asked while elbow deep in a busted engine mount. What's the brand? He hasn't finalized it yet, she said, in that hopeful, breathy tone moms use when lying to themselves. But it's bold, disruptive. Disruptive turned out to be a Shopify store that sold $40 hoodies with metallic text like grind mode only and no plan B. One Christmas, Chad handed everyone in the family a hoodie from his launch. Mine said, "Money talks, losers save." I stared at it for a moment, folded it neatly, and handed it back. Wrong size, I said calmly. I wear self-respect. Dad didn't laugh. Chad definitely didn't. The rest of dinner was awkward. Turkey got cold, but it didn't matter. I was used to being the background noise. Every time I pulled into their driveway, it was like I brought the smell of grease and gravel into their pristine little suburban fantasy. Even when I started making decent money, steady work, loyal customers, invoices paid on time. It was like none of it counted. "You still working with your hands?" Dad asked once. "No, I just yell at engines now and they fix themselves," I said dryly. He blinked, then gave one of those polite chuckles you use when someone forgets to bring dessert. But what stung more than their condescension was the realization that they didn't actually see me. Not really. Not as someone building something. Just someone who wasn't Chad. And Chad, he still lived at home. Still launching things, still networking. He had more photo shoots than customers. At 27, I bought my first tow truck. I paid for it in full. Had my name printed on the side in bold letters. It wasn't flashy, but I felt like a king. That same year, I caught my mom whispering at a family get-together that I still did odd jobs, like I was walking dogs part-time instead of running a real business. I could have corrected her. I could have whipped out my P&L statement. Instead, I helped carry the cooler to the backyard and let them all pretend Chad was the family's golden ticket. Because one thing they never asked was who fixed all their cars, who patched Dad's leaky fuel pump, who rotated Mom's tires every season. They just assumed I'd always be there. But quiet doesn't mean weak, and dependable doesn't mean doormat. They'd learn that later the hard way. By the time I hit 30, Mason's Reliable Repair wasn't just my garage. It was a name that meant something in town. I had a crew of 4, a rotating schedule that didn't run me into the ground, and a surprisingly decent espresso machine I picked up from a closing cafe for $50. The waiting area had magazines, air conditioning, and a laminated sign that read, "No, we don't fix what your cousin watched a YouTube video about." Life was steady, clean, uncomplicated unless I went home. Every visit to my parents' house still felt like stepping into someone else's highlight reel. Chad was always there, feet on the coffee table, smoothie in hand, iPad on his lap, spewing startup lingo like he was allergic to silence. "We're pivoting to digital subscription models," he told me one afternoon without context. "From what?" I asked. He blinked. "Doesn't matter. The future is scalable ecosystems." I nodded like I understood, then went outside and checked Mom's tire pressure because her rear left was looking low. They didn't even notice. My parents still saw me as the grease-stained background character to Chad's dazzling entrepreneurial journey. Even though his Shopify site had been under maintenance for 6 months, and I just signed a contract servicing a fleet of delivery vans across the county, the math wasn't hard. I was earning more. I had savings insurance investments. He had motivational quotes taped to his mirror and a growing list of networking expenses my parents kept covering. But logic never stood a chance against the golden child glow. At a family barbecue, my dad actually said this out loud. "Some people are just born for greatness. Others keep the engines running." I was standing right there with tongs flipping burgers, no apron, no protest, just quiet, until later that night when I quietly disconnected the jumper pack I'd left in their trunk. The one they used every other month when Dad left the lights on. Let Chad network his way to a new battery. I know petty, but it felt good. By now I'd stopped hoping they'd ever acknowledge what I built. They didn't ask about the shop, never once stepped foot inside. Didn't know I bought the building outright. Didn't know I owned the tow truck fleet that half the neighborhood called whenever their check engine light blinked. To them, I was still just a guy who liked tools. Chad, meanwhile, was on his 6th business card redesign. Then came the real cherry on top. One morning, I got a call from the bank. They were confirming a co-signed lease application for a new vehicle under my name. I froze. My name? I'm sorry, this is Mason Bennett, correct? The woman asked. Yeah, but I didn't apply for anything. There was a pause. Well, your name and credit were used to secure a $68,000 luxury SUV. Current co-signer listed as Charles Bennett. Chad. It was Chad. I nearly dropped the phone. I hadn't co-signed anything. I hadn't authorized anything. I hadn't even spoken to my brother in weeks. But somehow my name was sitting on a 6-figure loan, and they were trying to finalize the last few steps. I'll need you to cancel that immediately, I said coldly, and flag it for fraud. They did. I filed the report, locked. My credit froze every account, and then I waited for the explosion. Because if there was one thing I knew about Chad, it was that he only made bold moves when he thought someone else would catch him. This time he jumped, but no one was waiting underneath. The first message came in just after 9 a.m. Mom. Hey, sweetie, weird question. Did you freeze your credit? Chad said. There's a problem at the dealership. I didn't reply. I sat in the shop's office sipping burnt coffee from a machine that sounded like it was chewing gravel and watched my phone buzz on the desk like it owed me rent. 10 minutes later, another text. Dad. Call us, urgent. Then Chad called. I didn't pick up. Of course he didn't leave a voicemail. He never did. Voicemails left paper trails. Instead, I got a group text with all 3 of them. Dad. We need to talk. This is getting blown out of proportion. Chad. Bro, just talk to the guy at Nissan and sign the docs. It's a formality. Mom. Don't make this into a scene. It's just a car. Just a car. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. One of those deep, full-body laughs that comes from the place between disbelief and pure rage. My mechanic Paul peeked in from the bay and raised an eyebrow. You good? He asked. Oh yeah, I said. Just watching my family implode over a loan. I didn't co-sign. He blinked, gave me that not touching that face, and backed out like he'd walked into a crime scene. I let the messages sit. By lunch, my phone looked like it was being held hostage. 7 missed calls, 3 voicemails, 15 texts. So I answered just one. Mom. Mason, she said in that tight, overly sweet voice she used when she wanted something. This is getting a little dramatic. Is it? I said, chewing on a sandwich. Because it feels more like identity theft with sprinkles. He didn't mean to use your name. That's not how names work, Mom. She sighed like I was the one being unreasonable. Your brother was just trying to get his business mobile. The SUV was for client meetings. He thought it'd help him finally close those deals. In the trunk, I asked. Was he going to pop out like a surprise? Mason, please don't make jokes. I'm not joking, I said, setting my sandwich down. You want jokes? Ask Chad how fraud fits into his 5-year business plan. There was silence. Not guilt, just irritation, like I was making dinner awkward. We raised you to be better than this, she finally said. You're being cruel. No, I replied calmly. I'm being careful. You should try it sometime. Click. She hung up. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. The old fan above me rattled like it was held together with zip ties and spite. And in that moment, I felt it. Not anger, not shock relief. Relief that the mask had finally dropped. That we weren't playing nice anymore. Because for years, I'd been the fallback, the fixer, the he'll understand guy. They never asked. They just assumed that I'd always clean up Chad's messes. That I'd always come when they called. But not this time. Not after they tried to sign my name onto a $68,000 mistake with leather seats and a sunroof. That weekend, I got one final message from Dad. Don't come to the family dinner unless you're ready to apologize. I read it twice, laughed. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I made other plans. That night, I invited my crew, Paul, Eddie, and Sam, to the garage. We rolled up the bay doors, dragged out a cooler, lit a charcoal grill, and played old rock music from a Bluetooth speaker that barely worked. We ate under the bare shop lights, sitting on tires and crates, joking about clients who called their rotors rotaries and insisted air filters were a conspiracy. Someone brought beer. Someone else brought wings. And for once, I wasn't the reliable son. I was just Mason. The guy who built something. The guy who showed up for the people who showed up for him. They didn't know it yet, but that dinner, the one they threatened to ban me from it, would be the last invitation I'd ever care about. After the fraud report, There wasn't some dramatic showdown. No one drove over in a rage. No one banged on my shop's doors. They just went quiet. The family group chat, once filled with Chad's daily inspirational posts and blurry photos of whatever mom had for lunch, went dark. Dad stopped sending passive-aggressive memes. Even the annual invite to help clean the gutters before the snow hits mysteriously vanished. And I didn't chase it. For the first time in years, my phone didn't light up with requests, guilt trips, or casual reminders that I was part of the team. It felt weird, but in a good way. Like finally realizing the weight you'd been carrying wasn't yours to lift. Meanwhile, the garage was doing better than ever. I picked up a contract with a local courier service, 30 vans, high maintenance turnover, and zero tolerance for flaky shops. We got the job because Paul, my mechanic, who looked like he ate brake pads for breakfast, had fixed one of their vans on a Sunday when everyone else was closed. Word spread. Suddenly, Mason's Reliable Repair wasn't just a name, it was the go-to. We were booked 2 weeks out. I had to hire another tech. Then a second. Then a front desk guy who somehow got a 72-year-old client to leave a Yelp review in all caps. He fixed my muffler and my faith in men. I framed that one. I also finally bought out the garage next door. The place with the rusty fence and weird neon clock that always blinked 8888. It doubled our space. My guys celebrated with tacos. I celebrated by paying the invoice in full and not telling anyone but my accountant. And still nothing from the family. No congratulations, no drive-bys, no, hey, we were just in the area. I didn't expect it. But there was this small, stupid part of me, the kid who used to tape coupons to his allowance so he could buy tools that still thought maybe someone would say, "We're proud of you." Instead, what I got was winter. Our town doesn't do mild seasons. It does extremes. 1 week it's sunny, the next, it's 8 degrees Fahrenheit, and your breath turns to icicles before you even get to the car. My shop stayed slammed. People who ignored oil changes all year suddenly wanted miracles. And then one night just before close, my phone buzzed. Mom, not a text, a call. I stared at the screen, let it ring once, twice, 3 times, then picked up. Hey, I said, more curious than anything. She didn't even say hi, just went straight into it. Mason, can you come by? I waited. The garage door is stuck, the power went out, Chad's car won't start, and your dad? He tried using jumper cables and something sparked, and now it smells like burning rubber. I blinked. She kept going. It's freezing. Your brother's on the phone with roadside assistance, but they're saying 2 hours. We're all stuck here, and your father refuses to call a tow. He said to ask you, just in case. Just in case. As if I wasn't their last resort, as if I hadn't been pushed out of every birthday, holiday, and family dinner for the past 2 years, I stayed quiet. Mason, she said again, quieter. Can you come? I let the silence hang for a moment. Then I asked, why not Chad? She paused. He's trying. He's inside looking for the manual. I almost laughed. The manual for jumper cables in a blackout in winter. I can't tonight, I said evenly. Oh, her voice dropped. Well, maybe tomorrow. No, I said. I mean, I can't anymore. Not tonight, not next time. I'm done showing up like a spare tire. Another pause. Then, your father won't like that. I smiled to myself. He never did. I hung up gently. No drama, no last words, just peace. For the next few weeks, I didn't hear from them. No calls, no texts, not even a passive-aggressive voicemail from Dad telling me to get over myself. It was like I'd fallen off the family's GPS. And honestly, I didn't mind the silence. It felt earned. But the world didn't stop. Business was booming. I signed a deal with a rideshare maintenance hub that brought in 10 new vehicles a week, hired a part-time accountant, finally upgraded our shop's heat. No more freezing fingers during oil changes. My crew was thriving too. Paul bought a new truck. Eddie took his first vacation in 5 years. And we didn't talk about family. We talked about torque specs, stripped bolts, and what kind of pizza to get on Fridays. It was simple and good until Dad showed up. I was in the middle of explaining a diagnostics report to a customer when I saw the reflection in the shop's glass. A tall figure in a stiff coat standing by the entrance like he wasn't sure if he was allowed inside. Give me a sec, I told the customer, stepping out. He looked older, not dramatically but enough, a little sunken in the cheeks, gray that hadn't been dyed, that stiff kind of posture people have when they're trying not to admit they're uncomfortable. Mason, he said. Dad. We stood there surrounded by oil metal and the faint smell of brake fluid. Nice place, he said, glancing around like he was seeing it for the first time. Probably because he was. Thanks, I said flatly. He nodded, hands in his pockets, waiting for me to help him. He didn't ask about the business, didn't ask how I was. He went straight into it. Your mom's been worried. I raised an eyebrow. Worried about what? The house, he said. The roof's leaking, furnace broke down, pipes froze last week, the car needs work, and Chad, well, he's not around much. Shocking, I said dryly. Dad frowned. Look, things have been tight. Tight. That word again. Tight meant Mom couldn't keep covering Chad's car payments. Tight meant the money they poured into startups had vanished. Tight meant the golden child had finally run out of gold. We need help, he said. And there it was. No sugarcoating, no half-lies, just 4 words, flat and cold and unfamiliar, coming from a man who once called me background noise. I'm not a charity, I said. He bristled. I didn't say you were. You didn't have to, I replied. He opened his mouth like he wanted to fight to say something about family or responsibility or blood being thicker than invoices. But he didn't. He just looked tired. You know, I added, you once said some people keep the engine running and some are born for greatness. He looked down. Turns out you were right. I just think you got the names backwards. His jaw clenched. I thought he'd storm out, maybe yell, but he didn't. Instead, he said, Can we at least talk? I shrugged. Book an appointment. I'm busy this week. And I turned around, walked back into the shop, and left him standing there between a rusted Civic and a leaking minivan, right where he used to think I belong. It took exactly 4 days. 4 days after Dad showed up at my shop, Chad appeared. And I don't mean a phone call or a message or some lazy, you up text at 2 a.m. No, he walked into the garage like it was a social call, like he wasn't the reason my credit had nearly flatlined. Sunglasses indoors in winter. He looked like a failed influencer who just learned his sponsorship fell through. Mason, he said, arms wide like we were brothers from a movie instead of real life. Bro, it's been a minute. I didn't get up, didn't even blink. Paul over in the corner saw him and instinctively grabbed a wrench. He didn't raise it, just held it like a mechanic's version of, say, one more word. I gave him a quick nod. It was fine. Annoying but not dangerous. Chad leaned on the front counter like it owed him rent. His jacket, shiny and off-brand, had a tear near the pocket. His beard looked like it grew out of boredom. His whole vibe screamed startup energy, no follow-through. You've been doing good, he said, glancing around. This place looks dope. I didn't answer. He waited, smiled harder, then finally dropped the act. Okay, look, I need a favor. There it was. How much? I said. He blinked. What? Let's skip it. How much? He scratched the back of his head. Just like 500. I said, just to mess with him. He gave a weak laugh. 1,000. Of course. No. He blinked. You didn't even think about it. I did, I said, just really fast. His smile dropped. He shifted, trying to sell sincerity. Look, man, it's not even for me. Oh. I raised an eyebrow. It's for Mom and Dad. Stuff's been rough, like really rough. I said nothing. The mortgage is late, the furnace went, car broke down. They'd been trying to hold it together, but man, it's bad. I've been helping, but... He trailed off. They need help. I stayed silent for a second, then asked, Where was all this energy when you used my name for a car loan? That was a mistake, bro. No, I said. A mistake is forgetting to call. That was fraud. I didn't know it'd blow up like that. You never know, that's the point. Because you never had to learn. Chad's mouth twisted like he was chewing guilt and didn't like the flavor. He looked around anywhere but at me. They're going to lose the house, he mumbled. I stared at him. Then they'll finally understand what it feels like to live under pressure. Something I've known since I was a teenager eating dollar ramen while you were crashing Lexuses. Chad winced. You think I'm being harsh? I added. But you don't get it. For years I was the one fixing leaks, changing bulbs, paying for Mom's medicine in secret. You were the one getting applause. I didn't ask for applause, he muttered. No, you just took the credit. I stood up, walked out from behind the counter. He stiffened. I'm not doing this anymore, I said. I'm not the backup son, not the fixer, not the wallet. They're your parents, too, he said quietly. I nodded slowly. Yeah, they were. Until they traded me for a mascot. He swallowed hard. So that's it. I'm done funding mistakes, yours or anybody's. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "You know," he said at last, "you always wanted to be better than me." I tilted my head. "No," I said. "I just wanted to be free from you, and that was the difference." I didn't need to beat him. I just needed to get away. He stood there a moment longer, then turned and walked out. No tantrum, no slamming doors, just silence and shame. Finally. I watched him go, then turned to Paul, who was holding 2 wrenches now. "You good?" he asked again. "Yeah," I said. Then I exhaled, and for the first time in years, I felt lighter. A week passed, then 2. No more visits, no more calls, just quiet. The kind that didn't ask to be fixed. Then one morning, I was elbow deep in a suspension job when a delivery guy walked in with a clipboard and an envelope. "You, Mason?" "Yeah." "Certified letter, signature required." I wiped my hands and signed. Inside a formal, official-looking notice return address, a law office. The letter was short, cold, clinical. Apparently my parents were formally listing their house for sale. They were defaulting on the mortgage. The debts had caught up. At the bottom was a note scribbled in Mom's handwriting. "If you change your mind, we'd still take help. Love, Mom." I stood there in silence for a long moment. Not angry, not vindicated, just still. It wasn't that I wanted to see them fall, but I wasn't going to keep throwing rope to people who'd used it to pull me down. A few days later, I was driving to pick up a part when I saw the for sale sign out front of their house. The place looked smaller than I remembered. Older, cracked driveway, bent mailbox, a lawn that hadn't seen love in years. And there on the porch bench sat Dad. Not proud, not glaring, just tired. He didn't see me. Or maybe he did, but didn't move. I didn't stop. I just kept driving because I finally understood. I hadn't won. I'd survived, and then I'd built. I made something out of nothing while they burned through everything and still believed they were ahead. Later that evening, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it, but answered out of curiosity. A woman's voice. Nervous. "Hi, is this Mason? I'm so sorry to bother you. I got your number from a friend. I heard you do good work. My car died on the freeway and I really need a ride across town. No one else picked up." I paused, blinked and smiled because I knew that voice. It was my mother. I didn't yell, I didn't hang up, I didn't even flinch. I just said, "Sorry, I think you have the wrong number," and hung up. That was the ride she'd waited 15 years for, the one she never saw coming.